first slide. They say our students are our messengers who carry our message to times and places we could never hope to visit. I stand before you today to speak about my mentor and a person who touched my life, and many other lives in this organization. His name is Joseph Wyatt, and he died in January of this year, about a month short of his 95th birthday. He was born February 20th, 1920. He used to make a big point as an ophthalmologist that it was interesting that he had that 2020 as part of his birth history. As a young man in a small town of Flora, Illinois, he was the captain of the baseball team and the basketball team and the football team. He was Mr. Jock, and he was extremely athletic, and he spent his whole life being dedicated to athletics. However, he had his education at Kirksville. He then went into general practice for a short period of time, and then did a residency in ophthalmology in Los Angeles. He came back to Detroit, Michigan, practiced double ENT, as it was all double ENT at that time, and later in 1961 founded the first ophthalmology-only residency program at Detroit Osteopathic Hospital. That tradition was carried on to Dr. Patrick Murray, and then after Dr. Murray's demise to Mike Rubens and Sidney Simonian. Dr. Wyatt was a very strong person with a strong sense of duty and a strong sense of responsibility, and taught all of his residents so much about patient care, and not just the medical aspects, but the emotional and supportive aspects. He taught us a lot about practice, and I remember when they had this fancy thing called the pegboard, and he explained to me he really didn't know how to work the pegboard, but about once a week, when his employees would go home, he'd go into the drawer where the pegboard system was kept for checks and for income and outgo, and he would raffle it around and move it around so that they knew he was looking at it, even though he didn't understand the system of how it worked. He was a dedicated teacher to all of us. And certainly every resident somewhere along the way makes a mistake or does something wrong. And he would ask you, why did you do that? And if you gave him a reasonable answer, he would say, that's very reasonable. Okay. And would go on about it. And if it wasn't reasonable, you certainly knew about that. His family tells me, as I've spoken to them many times over the years, that they were incredibly jealous about his second family, about his love for his training program, his love for this organization, and how they all felt that they had to share their husband and their father with us. And they did. Joe Wyatt probably held every elected office this organization has, serving as chairman of the Board of Examiners, and later as chairman of the Board of Governors. He loved this organization, and if there's a legacy of Joe Wyatt, it's that so many of the graduates of the program he founded have gone on to be officers and otherwise serve this organization. It was inculcated to us at the very earliest moment that this was the backbone of osteopathy, this was the backbone of ophthalmology, ENT, but at that point they were eye, and that we had a duty, a strong duty, to defend this organization and participate in this organization, and at the minimum attend the meetings. There have been many presidents and officers from that program. I ask you to stand for just a brief moment to honor the passing of a giant in our field, who I'm sure that if there's any way they have a way of looking down on us from up there, Joe Wyatt. Joe Wyatt's in this room. If you'll put on my next slide, this was taken some years ago at the presentation of a plaque to Joe indicating the residents who had finished or were in his training program. To this date, we're just short of 100 people who have completed the DOH ophthalmology program, which is called something else today, but it's still the program Joe Wyatt founded. I thank you very much.
Joe Wyatt program.
Thank you, Dr. Bizer.